Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Sarasota Bay Deep Dive interview series, where we interview people whose work has positive impacts on Sarasota Bay. My name is Darcy Young. I work for the Sarasota Bay Estuary Program in Sarasota, Florida, where our mission is to restore estuaries from Anna Maria Sound down to the Venice Inlet. And my guest for this 9th Deep Dive episode today is Dr. Ernesto Lasso de la Vega. And Ernesto is a volunteer with Sarasota Bay Watch, which is an action-oriented grassroots nonprofit organization that's dedicated to restoring coastal ecosystems through citizen participation. And Ernesto is joining us today to talk specifically about Sarasota Bay Watch's volunteer-driven efforts in clam restoration. Ernesto is, in his non-volunteer life, is a biologist who's working at the Lee County Hyacinth Control District, controlling aquatic weeds and managing the water quality laboratory for Lee County. Ernesto also teaches biology and microbiology at Florida Southwestern State College. And he also serves on the advisory boards for Florida Sea Grant, the Coastal and Heartland National Estuary Partnership, our sister program down to the south. And he's also a board member and a super volunteer with Sarasota Bay Watch. So welcome, Ernesto.
See my
Great.
Okay, now my microphone is not mute. Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. I love to be representing Sarasota Bay Watch. Is one of my favorite organizations, and I tell you, it's an honor to be representing and especially presenting to all of you this project.
Fantastic. So Ernesto, can you give us a little bit of detail on how you got involved with Sarasota Bay Watch?
Well, I tell you, this goes way back, like almost maybe 6 to 7 years. I started as a volunteer just when they were doing the seagrass monitoring, the scallop monitoring, every activity going on in the county, Sarasota County, that requires some water. I was always present there as a volunteer, and I saw and I met so many of the interactive and very exciting people who were from Sarasota Bay Watch. So, and I got involved in knowing them. And also that I started looking at their actions that were so fantastic. And that's what it really got me motivated. And also one day they asked me, hey, would you mind to be part of our board of members? And I said, absolutely, I cannot stop from going. And as you mentioned in my bio, that I work in Lee County, I live in Charlotte County, but I actually play and spend my fun time, doing diving, swimming, and doing kayaking in Sarasota, which is what I really love a lot to do.
Well, I love to hear that. You play in our beautiful bay. That's great. So Ernesto, you're here today to talk specifically about Sarasota Bay Watch's clam restoration activities because you chair their clam restoration committee. So you focus on a species that's called the southern hardshell clam. I'm wondering if you can tell us about these clams and what their role is in Sarasota Bay and other estuaries in Southwest Florida. Why are they important?
Yeah, these clams actually are native of Southwest Florida. The scientific name is Mercenaria campinsiensis, and there is another. Then the common name is the southern clam, the southern clam. This actually is the south clam is more adapted to live on the warmer waters. Is able to survive a lot of the conditions that we have in the south. And compared to the Mercenaria, which is the northern clam, and that is not as easy to live in these conditions. So we're using this clam because the power that they have. Clams usually they do filter. They take the water from the algae from the water and they filter through their system, and then they put back again clean water. And in the process of doing that, they can filter almost 20 gallons a day of water in one clam. So if you multiply for all the clams that we're putting, which are talking thousands of clams, we have a filtration, a biological filtration that is a native and is able to even reproduce later and then produce more babies, and then they will continue this process.
Wonderful. So What are Sarasota Bay Watch's goals for clam restoration? Why have you identified this as a priority for restoring these clams in our bays?
Yeah, so we started earlier with other bivalves. We started with the scallop, and we saw the scallop has been pretty much going in deterioration. The populations have been declining in the bay, so we know that the water quality has not been good. And one of the activities that originally we started was producing and reseeding scallops. And we tried that, and then the unfortunately events that the red tide and some other contaminants killed a lot of the populations of scallops. So we look into this other alternative bivalve, the clam, the mercenaria, which is more tolerant to toxins. And we thought, okay, well, this is a better organism for this process of reseeding and producing and getting better benefits. So that's the main reason why we're going with this organism.
That's such a clever pivot, to keep working on shellfish restoration in Sarasota Bay, but maybe use a different species that might better tolerate the conditions that we have today. So can you tell me a little bit about the biology of these clams? Where do they live in the bay? What do they do?
They basically live in the bottom, and it has to be a soft, sandy soil where they can burrow themselves, and then they will stick a siphon, which is where they actually get in the water and then the algae. But they're very inclusive into the mud. Now, this clam has been also produced by aquaculturists who are producing this clam for food. And it's a phenomenal process that they actually raise the clams from babies. I mean, they have a hatchery up north in Port Manatee. There's a farmer who actually produced the babies, and then from there they're raising into a bigger in troughs, and then trying to keep them as big as they possible to get to about 2 inches, and that's the size that they sell to the consumption. But in our case, we took this clam, and instead of raising them for consumption, we're using it for restoration. In fact, if I may, I would like to show some of the activity that we do, so it gives you an idea about how much the process. If I may switch to the sharing so I can play a video.
Absolutely. Let me know when you're ready for me to share your screen.
Okay, I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm putting right now a video that we show and we use to promote this, and I'm gonna roll it, and it has music, so I will increase the volume just a little bit.
Okay, this is great. So it's showing how you guys take the clams out and put them in the bay.
That's Carter, David Carter. He's the farmer who is actually raising our clams for us. And what we're doing here is we're putting all these clams, we're moving them from his location, and we're using a cooler truck that normally carries beer, but in this case, we're carrying these clams in a very climate control, so we don't shocking them from the water into the surface of hot water. Of hot conditions. So we put them in this barge, and this was a release that we did last year. We released almost 250,000 clams, and you can see some of this is just a portion of them. There you go. And these are our volunteers. We love them.
Money shot.
And yeah. So this process, we decided certain locations, and we are releasing those clams just as like that. And you can see there are going to be all deposit in the bottom, or sometimes a little rough, but they can handle it. That's how they look at the very end. And you can see the puff that you see there. That's a clam who has just buried themselves. Of course, there's some other organisms there. So we have done that for the last two years, and we've been putting those clams. And now the process actually, it got me more involved because I saw a lot of these clams going into the waters, but there was little to no monitoring to see how effective this and what is the survival of these clams. So they told me like, okay, well, Ernesto, if you want to know that, just get involved and put that program together. So we tap with some other organizations like the Gulf Shelf Institute, which by the way has been phenomenal because they're providing us Bruce Barber from the Gulf Shelf Institute and Dinora Chasson. They both have been scientists who have been supporting and helping us, guide us to find location, to find methodology, how to monitor that these clams are surviving and to see that the project is effective or not. Because if it's not effective, then we'll learn from this. And by all means, this is a learning experience that we want to share with other organizations who are thinking the same way. They're thinking to use these clams. So here we are learning and passing that information to the rest of the groups.
Great. I love hearing about those partnerships, kind of acknowledging that it takes a village to raise these clams, right? So
yeah.
How do they actually do the monitoring of the clams? Because they dig themselves down in the sediment, right? So
correct. Yeah. In fact, we have a methodology we're working on it to where we're gonna be producing transects, and in those transects on the areas where the clams are being deployed, we're gonna have square meters and then dig into it with divers and then pulling them out, measure them, and then returning them back again. So there's a whole scientific protocol that is going along with this. Of course, this is a lot of manpower. Men and women, but we're diving and we need a lot of volunteers, boaters, and actual people. But it's something that I tell you, most divers will love to have an activity that is meaningful, and in this case, this is one of them.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, we have so many, activated volunteers who really care about the health of our bays, who are just looking for ways to get involved. And actually, we have a question here from Sheila. Hi, Sheila. She's wondering if she was snorkeling in the bay, how would I be able to tell if I was swimming over live clams? Is there any way that you can tell when you're swimming over live clams that they're there?
Well, that is a little hard because they're right. The siphon, you won't see the siphon that stick out unless you go purposely and start digging with with a knife or some kind of a sharp object. You might see some clams that sometimes they just pop out of the surface and they remain in there, and then you will see the big clam. It's a large clam. We're talking about a 2-inch to an inch clam, and don't confuse with another tiny one that is called a Venus ray, which is different from the Mercenaria. In fact, one thing will be great for people who like to is to start collecting the shells, the dead shells, of course, not the live ones, but then start looking at them and then finding the differences and then identify them as you're learning and then you're finding out. There's clams, there's oysters, there's all different kind of bivalves that could be actually identified by just looking at them. And this is an exercise of learning.
Great. Yeah, you're making me want to go snorkel in the bay right now.
Oh, absolutely. The water quality is excellent. It's beautiful. Sometimes it's very clear. Sometimes it's not. But when you have a clear day, oh my God! I have another video that I would like to roll it pretty quickly, if I may.
Let's do it.
It shows underwater activity what are we planning on doing.
Great.
So let me click this one, and can you see it? And I will mute this one. Yeah,
okay.
I will mute this one. So what you see here is these are squares, 1 square meter, and we're going under, and I'm using a ruler here because that was my first thing, because we have a ruler, we can measure stuff. So I'm gonna advance a little bit this video so we don't take so much time. And we have done these transects, and the transects are pulling some of the shells and we're placing in there. Of course, the sad thing about this video is that I was by myself, so I put the camera down there, but I wish I had another cameraman or women. So we have basically this, and then we're planning on doing more of this kind of a process. Again, measuring now the clams, making sure that they're growing and they are doing fine. And then once we finish that, we place them back again. Here's a few clams that we have found. Some of them are already dead. And well, if they're dead, it's because somebody ate them and it's part of a food chain. And that's it. I just don't want to take too much time with the video.
No, these videos are fantastic. I'm loving the videos. So, Ernesto, what kind of organisms would be eating the clams? Do you know?
Yeah, well, they are usually shell themselves, but there are some borrowers. There are some other mollusks that can come and they can actually the biggest one is the manta rays. The manta
Oh,
rays can
cool.
come and they can crush the poor guys. So we're trying to grow them as big as possible so the size can actually, the thickness of that shell can protect them. And that's one of the things that we mostly, but to be quite honest, I mean, I'm not so worried about the predator, although they are predators. Is water quality is the main issue. If the water
Mhm.
is bad because you have low oxygen or you have toxins, which, by the way, the clams can tolerate a lot of these red tide toxins and they can tolerate some bad conditions, but up to a certain point. And that's the saddest of the whole thing. If we want to keep the clams growing, the water has to be in good shape. And then they're going to be benefiting themselves by cleaning the environment as they are doing right now.
Great. Jennifer's here. Hi, Jennifer. And she has a question for you. She's wondering, do you know if limpkins eat these clams?
They might actually, but then the ones that are, yes, as long as they find a shallow areas and they can actually the bird can actually grab them. But the ones that we're planning on putting and the ones that we're trying to seed are deep. I'm talking 12 to 10 feet deep, and there's two reasons for that. One is that we don't want to compete with other resources, natural resources. For example, seagrasses. Seagrasses, they usually grow in shallow areas, and we don't want to put these clams in areas where they're so shallow they might be competing with the
Right.
seagrasses. And then the second thing is we don't want accidental swimmers or people who are just wandering and gathering clams to be taking our clams. So they are the deeper. So the only way to get there is by even diving or holding your breath for a long time. So that's the reason why we're going into deeper waters. So there is definitely a benefit. So the process that we're looking, the other things we're also looking is the currents, because there has to be a certain amount of water flow so the algae has to be a certain amount. We don't want overwhelming with too much algae that it can be deteriorating the oxygen conditions and the natural conditions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's so interesting to think about these different parts of the bay. I think often we think about it as just a big bathtub, but there's really different zonations. And so, for example, a lot of the oyster restoration that's done in this area of Southwest Florida is mostly intertidal oysters. So you've got shellfish that are kind of in that much shallow area, like you mentioned. But that also makes it harder to find places to do it, right? Whereas if you're able to do that shellfish restoration much deeper in the bay, maybe it opens up some opportunities in places where you don't have seagrass or other kinds of habitat, right?
That's right. And one thing I might say, which is not a negative comment, it's about permitting. In order for us to do this, we need to file permits with the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. The EP has also been involved with projects like this that it requires permits. The Department of Agriculture, I mean, you're talking permits after permits. Sometimes it gets a little discouraging. However, in the last week, we just had conversations with the EP, which are looking for a new type of permit that will allow organizations that are non-for-profit to apply for these permits and then be able to do this kind of a restoration with a lot of less paperwork for them and for us to do this, because they like that. They like this as an encouraging activity.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's one of the great things about having a working relationship with them. I know that a lot of your shellfish work is in partnership with FWC, and that you can talk to them about those challenges you have.
Correct. And don't get me wrong about the permitting. I'm not against that, because they're looking at protecting some of the things, like the Department of Agriculture. They don't want to give these crazy releasings without any monitoring or how not to allow sometimes clams to be poisoned to be eaten by people. So they have that concern. The EP wants to continue monitoring their seagrasses, so they don't want to have these activities impair that. And then the same thing the other organizations are all concerned about. So I respect that, but then they also see the benefit of this.
Absolutely. Yeah, we saw something similar happen with living shorelines permitting at the federal and the state level, where, for a while there, it was, at least at the federal and state level, more difficult to get a permit for a living shoreline than for a bulkhead. And, through working with volunteer and nonprofit, other agencies, they were able to develop a permitting system that was easier to do the right thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've got another question here. These questions are great, y'all. Thank you. This one's from Christine. Hey there, Christine. She wants to know how long the deployed clams will remain in the bay, and if harvesting will be a part of this initiative to help remove some of the nutrients that the clams have accumulated while they've been in the water.
Well, let me answer first the last question about harvesting be part. No, we will not harvest these guys. These guys are filter units. They are working for us, and we're hoping that they will reproduce. And if they reproduce, produce babies, I don't know where those little larvae will go, but they will seed some other places, but they will be encouraging to grow. And then that's what we're really looking for. Now, the clams, how long are we going to be deploying? As long as we can find niches where they are necessary to be put in there, we will be doing this. In fact, I wanted to thank two groups that actually, one is the Charles and Marjorie Barnick Foundation. They were the ones who are providing us the fundings to find, and because these clams, they're not coming free. We've had to buy them. We had to buy them from a hatchery, which Carter Hamel is the hatchery that produces these clams. And then we have Carter Davis in Pine Island growing these clams to become larger, about 2 inches. So all that process, it costs money, and then money has been sometimes donated for us, but also we do activities to raise funds. In fact, we just did it in February, Scallopalooza, which is our annual fundraising, and it's fantastic. You should see the amount of people who come and support our work, because one of our our logo is this: the clean bay is everybody's business, because that is what it takes the whole community to realize that the water is not going to clean by itself. We have to do some things not to pollute, or just to actively start cleaning it up.
Yeah, I mean, Scallopalooza is so much fun, and you all have been so successful getting that message out and getting unique partners on board to help with your mission, and it's been really cool to see. So I guess that kind of answers my next question, which is that Baywatch is all volunteers, so you don't have any staff on board. And so, do you want to talk a little bit about how you do get so much done as an all-volunteer organization of people who care a lot, but who have other things to do?
Yeah, that's right. In fact, most of the volunteers are working already, but they're doing this job on the Sarasota Bay Watch on the weekends, and we do a lot of work. Students, retirees, I mean, business people who are all looking into this process. In fact, if I may play the last video that I have, this will give you an idea about not only the clam project that we're doing, but we're doing these other projects that also involve many people, many players. And for this one, I have some drums there, but I'm putting it in mute because I wanted just to talk as you can see the images. Can you see the images?
Yep, I can. Yep, looks good.
So these are cleanups that we do in bays. Well, that was an island. Now this is the Saprito. We go with divers, with other groups like the Gulf Reef, the Suncoast Reef divers who come and they help us remove all this debris that are places, nettings and stuff like that, tires, all this garbage has been found by divers from Sarasota Bay Watch and other groups, and we collect that. We measure the amount of garbage that is in there. This is a nice view because we have a flounder there swimming away. and this shot that I love because we are removing that little lure. And then
Oh,
I know it's like I'm so happy for the girl who took that video. So other cleanups that we do in the skis, that we have volunteers who come with the trash bags and then putting all these things. These are the kind of stuff that really motivates the volunteers. We keep monofilament cleanup. Again, all these activities, Sarasota Bay Watch has been doing it for every year for many years, and this is the clam restoration. Again, all this, somehow, if you feel like that this is part of your life, by all means participate, come and meet. And we are constantly announcing these activities online and the website. We have a website, Sarasota Bay Watch, a website, and it has calendars of activities. Be involved, and I tell you, it's a magical thing. When we go there, we see like each other's friends, families are coming out. Wow, it's a party.
yeah. You always make it fun.
Yeah.
Um, one of the great things I think Baywatch does is how much youth involvement you have. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how you involve students and youth in the program.
The students are very motivated, very easy to motivate because they believe, and then we believe on them. Every activity that we do, we always put the students up front to learn and also to get acquainted with the resources that they have, and then why that we keep them. We have many students who are participating on that, but the other portion is that they are learning. And they're going to be the ones, whether it's here or in another community, they will keep this in their minds. So in the future, they're going to be our next generation of people who are really caring for the environment. I think that's the ultimate. And then they will remember this because they will remember their families, like those kids that you saw there. It's like they will laugh about that in the future. And they will feel like, okay, I had to do this because I did it before. I tell you, it's a really invigorating activity.
Yeah, absolutely. I love seeing, the different levels of leadership at Baywatch and seeing that you have youth on your board even, which I think is a great step for them. So Ernesto, is there anything else that you want to share with us? Any more cool videos you have up your sleeve?
Well, this is not just a single person here representing it. I got several pieces persons in mind, and Larry Schultz, John Ryan, Rhonda Ryan, oh my God, I got so many people, but I'm getting kind of excited about it. You can see the board of directors in the Sarasota Bay Watch website, and it's very active. Again, it's an activity, an organization, it's a very root-based organization that is building up momentum to many years since the founders, and I'm so happy to be part of it.
Wonderful. Ernesto, how about one last question, and then I'm going to ask you your final question. All right, we have one last question from Sheila here. She's wondering if you're thinking with the clam restoration project, if you're thinking at all about the nutrient removal capabilities of these clams. Not only are they providing habitat, they're providing food for other predators, but they're also removing nutrients by filtering the water. Do you have a sense of, what scale that's at?
Yeah, in fact, the one information that we have to continue adding, research on this, because we don't have all the answers. We have this information about the 20 to 25 gallons per clam a day, which is a good, but then I still think we need to validate that with research. I mean, there are some groups who are doing in-lab research. In fact, we provided some clams to the new college because the students there have the labs. They also want to do observations with the clam where we're doing the releases. There's also students who need to finish their degrees, and they are looking in this as a study to finalize their degree. So this is a kind of stuff that we need to continue acquiring information. As far as doing the nitrogen and phosphorus, it's mostly algae what these guys they filter, and I think that is the power of these animals. They were there before, and we want to see if we can establish again populations that are sustainable. And I think that the word is sustainable, because just putting clams that might not do it, but if we put it in the right place where they really like to and they thrive, that is what we're really accomplishing something. Same idea with the oysters, but in this case, the clams are probably they're faster grower. They grow, their life expand is a little less, but it's more faster growing, and that's where I think we're tapping into it.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to following, how this project continues over the years, and hopefully getting out there with y'all for an event soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to be participant, just go to the website of the Sarasota Bay Watch, and then just send us an email, send us a look at the calendars, get involved, and we'll be happy to have you as a participant.
Awesome. Yeah, I know that you all must be looking forward to having those volunteer events again at some point as well. Yeah, we like to partner on the seagrass survey and other kinds of great annual events like that had to be postponed this year, but we'll get back out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Ernesto, unless there's anything else that you'd like to share with us about Sarasota Bay Watch, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up with your final question, which is, do you have a favorite part of Sarasota Bay?
Tell you, it's ironic because it's still in the area of closer to Moat Marine. There's a park called the Ken Thompson Park. And Ken Thompson Park, people see it as like just a fishing place, but if you go underwater, you might find corals. And I have found corals, I have lobsters. And not that they don't go for the lobsters, but just appreciate the biology that exists there. It is the little tiny niches like that, you might find them, and then just keep it quiet because unless you want to share with some other people. But that is a neat site that I found, and I love to go there just like looking at the creatures in there.
I agree. Yeah, that's such a cool site, and both of our organizations, have different events that happen right off of Ken Thompson Park. You do the scallop search with Bay Watch, and we partner with Sarasota County for the seagrass survey every year, and it's just such a treat to be able to spend time at that park and just looking underwater. It's so much fun. So, Ernesto, thank you so much for joining us today. That was a great interview. I really loved the videos that you brought to illustrate,
thank you.
a variety of things that Sarasota Bay Watch does in the community. Yeah,
thank you so much for letting us be part of this, participating in this interview.
Anytime. And to the audience, thank you all for joining us as well. If you check out the comments on this video, you'll be able to see a link to the Sarasota Bay Watch website, as well as their Facebook page. And I definitely encourage you to follow them as well. And with that, I would like to invite you to join us here again tomorrow. Actually, we'll be back tomorrow at 11 o'clock in the morning. We'll be interviewing Dr. Angela Collins, who is the policy grant agent in Manatee County. And she'll be speaking with us about how we can support local seafood producers during the COVID-19 epidemic. So I'll go ahead and put the information for her interview up there. And thanks, and I hope I see you all tomorrow.
Thank you.